All right, get ready because today we're going to really dig into Eat That Frog.
Oh, yeah.
This book.
It's everywhere you know.
It's a productivity classic.
It is.
And maybe you're feeling like your to-do list is just getting out of control
Yep.
and you want to, get things done,
Yeah, get some results.
get some results. So we read the whole thing.
Cover to cover.
We went through it, and we're going to break down the best parts for you, just the stuff that's going to help you actually get more done.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about this book is, it's gotten so much attention from, everyone, CEOs to, stay-at-home parents.
Oh, yeah. I've heard so many people recommend this.
So many people say it's changed their lives, So there's got to be something to this whole eat that frog idea.
Yeah, for sure. So before we jump into all the juicy details, what exactly is this frog we're supposed to be eating?
Okay, so think of it this way. Your frog is that one task that you are just absolutely dreading.
Yeah, the one you put off.
The one you keep pushing to the bottom of the list. It feels huge. It might feel scary.
Right.
But UKNAW, deep down, it's probably the most important thing you need to do.
Yeah.
It could be launching a new project at work.
Yeah.
It could be having, a tough conversation you're avoiding.
Yeah.
Or even finally cleaning out, that inbox that is overflowing.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's got one of those.
We all have that digital frog.
Yeah, but, okay, so we all have these frogs.
Yeah.
But how does tackling that one task, that one frog, how does that actually make you more productive overall?
It's not just about checking off that one thing, right?
Right.
It's more about, overcoming the inertia. It's about building momentum.
Okay.
So you eat the frog, and then everything else just seems easier to tackle.
Oh, I see. So it's like...
And you get that, feeling of accomplishment.
Right. You feel good.
You feel so good.
So it's almost like a psychological trick.
It totally is. It's like a domino effect.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Now, one thing that Eat That Frog really emphasizes
is the power of habits.
Okay.
And he talks about these 3 Ds,
Right.
decision, discipline, and determination. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, like something you'd see on a motivational poster.
Right.
But there's, real substance to this.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Yeah.
You decide, okay, I'm going to change how I approach my work.
Right.
Then you need the discipline to actually stick to those new habits.
Absolutely.
And then the determination to keep going, even when it gets tough.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And the book gives you this awesome 7-step process for setting goals. So you have the decision.
Okay.
You set a deadline.
Okay.
You make a list.
Right.
You got to organize that list.
Got it.
Then you take action.
Okay.
You break things down into daily steps.
Yeah, those smaller chunks.
And then it's about persistence. You know, sticking with it.
So it's a roadmap, like you said.
Exactly. It's a roadmap.
So you have these goals in mind, but why is this process necessary? Why not just write down your goals and call it a day? There's something really powerful about actually writing down your goals, making them tangible. It's almost like you're declaring them to the universe.
Yeah. It makes it real.
It holds you accountable. It's not just about wishful thinking. It's about actually putting those plans into action. Remember that 10-90 rule he talks about?
The 10-90 rule?
Yeah, spending just a little bit of time planning up front can save you so much time and headache later on.
So it's that 10% planning, 90% execution thing.
Exactly.
Got it. Now I'm curious about this whole 80-20 rule.
Yeah, the 80-20 rule.
It's everywhere.
It pops up everywhere.
It pops up in this book. It pops up in every productivity book I've ever seen. Doesn't it have something to do with Italian economists and beans or something?
Well, yeah, kind of. It actually goes back to this guy Pareto who noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people.
Wow.
But what's interesting is that this principle, it applies to way more than just land ownership.
Yeah.
It's like this idea that in so many areas of life, 80% of our results actually come from just 20% of our efforts.
Oh, that's interesting. So how does knowing that actually help me be more productive? It still feels a little abstract.
Think about your to-do list, right?
Okay.
Are there certain tasks that you do that consistently move you forward? Maybe it's closing deals, maybe it's writing, really good content, or even just that hour you spend every morning, planning and strategizing before you get into the weeds.
Right.
That's your 20%. You got to focus on those activities.
Okay.
And delegate or eliminate as much of that other 80% as you can.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And then watch your productivity just skyrocket.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
It's all about being strategic.
Okay, this is getting good. Now, I know Tracy also talks about this ABCDE method.
Yeah.
It seems so simple, but when you actually start doing it, it really makes you think.
Yeah. So basically, you go through your to-do list
Oh, yeah.
and you assign a letter to each task.
Okay.
So your A tasks, those are your must-do today items. Those are the frogs we were talking about.
Okay.
B tasks are important, but maybe not quite as urgent.
Right.
C's tasks, they have like minimal consequences if you don't get to them right away, and so on.
Oh, so it's like a way to prioritize, but it's also a way to...
It forces you to confront like those little time wasters,
Yeah.
those things that clog up our days.
So it's like a built-in system for saying no.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of creative procrastination comes in.
Creative procrastination. So wait, we're supposed to procrastinate now?
It sounds a little weird, right?
Yeah.
But it's not about being lazy or avoiding responsibility. Okay.
Okay.
It's about accepting that you just can't do everything. And sometimes the most productive thing you can do is decide what not to do.
Oh, okay.
So it's like consciously choosing to delay or even eliminate
Right.
those lower priority tasks.
So it's like a strategic procrastination.
Yes.
Okay, now give me an example, because I think this is one of those things that's like harder to wrap your head around.
Okay, so imagine you're working on a big presentation, right?
Yeah.
You could spend hours and hours like perfecting every single slide, agonizing over font choices and colors.
Oh, yeah. You're there.
But is that really the best use of your time? Maybe, like, getting the core content down,
Right?
practicing your delivery, that's the real 80%.
Right, that's the important stuff.
And obsessing over the visuals, that might just be a C task disguised as an A task.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
And speaking of those core activities, those things that really move the needle, I know Tracy also dives into this idea of key result areas.
Yes. And he frames it with this brilliant question. He asks, why am I on the payroll?
Why am I on the payroll? Okay, so what does that mean?
It's all about identifying those areas
Yeah.
where your contributions really make the biggest impact. And what he argues is that oftentimes our weakest key result area,
Oh.
that's actually the bottleneck. That's holding us back.
So even if you're doing great in most areas,
Even if you're killing it in other areas,
that one weak spot.
that one weak spot can totally drag you down.
So it's like limiting your potential.
Absolutely. And that can lead to procrastination.
Right, because
Right.
nobody wants to do the stuff they're bad at.
Exactly. We tend to avoid the things that we struggle with.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So the book really encourages you to not only identify those areas,
Yeah.
but to actively come up with a plan to improve them.
Okay.
Turn those weaknesses into strengths.
Okay. That's a good mindset shift.
It is.
Now, I really like how he brings up the law of forced efficiency.
Oh, yeah.
It's like common sense, right?
Yeah, but sometimes we need to be reminded.
You need that reminder.
You do. It's basically the idea that we always make time for the things that have serious consequences.
Right.
Think about it. You wouldn't skip paying your taxes
No.
just because you didn't feel like it.
No, there are consequences.
Right. There's urgency there because
Yeah.
you know there are consequences. Yeah.
So the trick is to apply that same logic to things that we tend to procrastinate on, even if those consequences aren't quite as, immediate or severe.
Right. So we have to create that sense of urgency,
Exactly.
even if it's like self-imposed.
Yeah. Even if you have to like trick yourself a little bit.
Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. This book is really about being intentional
It is.
and proactive,
Yes.
not just reactive.
Exactly. And that leads to another really important point.
Okay.
Preparation.
Yes. Preparation.
He emphasizes that so many people never even get started on important tasks because they just skip that step.
Oh, I see.
Like they feel overwhelmed, so they just avoid it altogether.
Yeah.
And he has this great anecdote about how people will put off writing a report for weeks,
Oh, yeah.
feeling totally stressed.
Yeah.
But if they just spent like an hour gathering the necessary data, outlining the key points,
right.
it would break that inertia.
It would get them going.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's not just about the physical preparation either.
Oh,
It's also about mentally prepping yourself to focus.
okay. Yeah.
It's about choosing to be present and engaged rather than letting distractions kind of pull you in a million different directions.
I feel like that's especially hard these days
It is. It's super hard.
with all the digital distractions.
There's all the pings and the notifications.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And that brings us to another key takeaway.
Yeah.
The importance of constantly upgrading your skills.
Upgrading your skills. Okay, yeah.
Because the world is changing so fast.
So fast.
And the knowledge and skills that might be valuable today
Yeah.
might be totally obsolete tomorrow.
Okay, that's scary.
It is a little bit scary. He actually quotes Og Mandino in the book, who said, "The greatest gifts you can give your family and the world are a healthy you and a happy you."
Oh, that's a good one.
And it's true, right? So investing in yourself,
Yeah.
both personally and professionally,
Right.
benefits everyone around you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here.
We have.
From identifying those frogs,
Eating those
eating
frogs.
those frogs, the 80-20 rule, the power of preparation.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff.
It seems like Eat That Frog is just packed with practical advice.
It really is. It's like a productivity toolbox.
It is. Now, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to dive into even more strategies from Eat That Frog, so stay tuned.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to our deep dive into Eat That Frog. You ready to tackle some more productivity-boosting strategies?
Oh, absolutely. I'm especially interested in this whole technology management thing. I feel
It's
like
a big one.
we're all so glued to our devices these days. It's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, on one hand, technology can totally streamline our work. It helps us connect with people, and it gives us access to information like never before.
Right.
But it can also be a huge distraction, pulling us away from the things that really matter.
Yeah. It's like our brains are just wired to crave those notifications, those little dopamine hits every time we check our email or social media.
He actually compares it to slot machines.
What?
Yeah, think about it. The anticipation of a potential reward, even if it's just like a funny meme or like on your latest post,
Right.
it keeps us coming back for more.
It's so true.
And before we know it, hours have gone by.
Okay, that's a little terrifying, but also incredibly relatable.
Right. So how do we actually break free from this cycle of distraction and reclaim our focus?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right. Well, he suggests a few things, but one of the simplest is to create what he calls zones of silence throughout your day.
Zones of silence. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. So this could mean turning off notifications for a bit,
Okay.
silencing your phone, or even like physically stepping away from your devices for a set period of time.
You know what? That sounds good in theory, but honestly, even the thought of doing that makes me a little anxious.
I get it.
It's like we've become so dependent on being constantly connected.
Yeah, it's true. It is definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think the rewards are worth it. Think about it. When was the last time you really focused on a single task without any interruptions?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Like that feeling of flow where you're just completely absorbed in what you're doing.
Yes, that's what we're aiming for.
But how do we get there more often? Is
Yeah.
it just about willpower?
I think willpower definitely plays a role, but he also talks about being more intentional with our technology choices.
Okay.
So instead of just passively scrolling through social media
Yeah.
or
So-
clicking on every single email that pops up,
Right.
we need to actively choose how we spend our time online.
So it's about setting boundaries
Right.
and being more deliberate about like what we're actually consuming and how we're using technology.
Absolutely. Ask yourself, does this app, this
Yeah.
website, this notification, does it actually support my goals?
That's a good question.
Does it help me get closer to what I want to achieve?
Yeah.
And if not, it might be time to, rethink your relationship with it.
I like that. Now, another strategy that he mentions is time chunking, which we touched on a little bit earlier.
Yes. Time chunking.
So can you remind everyone what that is?
Sure. It's all about blocking out specific chunks of time in your day
Okay.
and dedicating them to certain tasks. The key here is to treat these blocks like appointments, something you wouldn't just cancel or reschedule,
Right, like it's in your calendar.
It's in your calendar. So instead of just hoping that you'll find time to work on that important project,
Right.
you're proactively scheduling it into your day.
You're making that commitment.
Exactly. And during that time, eliminate all distractions. Close those extra tabs, silence your phone.
Yeah.
Give that task your full attention. You'll be amazed at how much you can actually get done when you work this way.
I believe it.
It's really powerful.
Now, can we talk a little bit more about creative procrastination? Because I think some people might still be struggling with that concept.
Yeah, I get it.
It seems so counterintuitive to intentionally delay tasks.
I know. But again, it's not about being lazy or avoiding responsibility. It's about recognizing that you just can't do everything.
Right.
And that sometimes the most productive thing you can do is decide what not to do.
So you're choosing your battles.
Exactly. It's about being strategic with your procrastination.
Okay.
Choosing to delay or even eliminate tasks that aren't truly essential.
It's like giving yourself permission to say no.
Yes. Remember that golfer he talks about in the book?
Oh, yeah.
The guy who had to give up his, beloved hobby to focus on his business and his family?
Right.
This is a tough decision.
Yeah.
But it ultimately allowed him to achieve greater success and happiness in other areas of his life.
So sometimes you have to make sacrifices
You do.
to really focus on what matters.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to the concept of key result areas.
Right, those core areas where your contributions really matter.
Exactly. And remember, he encourages us to ask ourselves, why am I on the payroll?
Why am I on the payroll?
What are those tasks that really move the needle forward?
The things that, like, justify your existence in your role,
Exactly.
whether you're a CEO or a stay-at-home parent.
Right. And he makes this fascinating point. He argues that our weakest key result area, that's often what sets the limit for our potential.
So even if we're crushing it in other areas,
Yeah, even if you're doing amazing in most things,
that one weak spot can hold us back.
it can be a real bottleneck.
That's a little daunting.
It can be, but it's also incredibly empowering.
Okay, how so?
Because once you identify those weaknesses, you can start working on them. You can turn those areas where you struggle into areas where you excel.
So it's not about beating yourself up for what you're not good at. It's about recognizing those areas for improvement and creating a plan to get better.
Exactly. And that ties in with the importance of constantly upgrading our skills, right?
Right, the world is changing so fast.
It's changing all the time. And those skills that are valuable today, they might not be tomorrow.
Right.
So it's crucial to invest in our own development to stay ahead of the curve.
It's like we have to become lifelong learners.
We do, always seeking out new information, honing our skills. And don't be afraid to seek out mentors, take courses, attend workshops, or simply just read books and articles in your field.
Yeah, there are so many resources out there.
There are. And the more you learn, the more valuable you become.
I love that. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to touch on one more concept that I found really powerful. The law of forced efficiency.
Oh, yes.
It's a good one.
It's so simple, but it really makes you think.
It really does. The idea that we always find time for things that have serious consequences. We don't skip paying our taxes. We don't miss our kids' school plays.
Right, because the stakes are high.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the trick is to apply that same sense of urgency to the things that we tend to procrastinate on.
So even if those consequences aren't as, immediate or life-altering,
Right.
we need to create that sense of urgency for ourselves. We do. Set deadlines, even if they're arbitrary, make commitments to other people, and really visualize those negative consequences of not completing the task.
It's almost like tricking our brains into taking it seriously.
It is, a little bit.
And you know what? Another thing I found helpful is breaking those big, daunting tasks down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Oh yeah, that's a classic productivity tip.
It helps to overcome that feeling of overwhelm, and it makes those frogs seem a lot less intimidating.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Exactly. And as you complete each step,
Yeah.
you get that little sense of accomplishment, and that fuels your motivation to keep going.
It's like a positive feedback loop.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here in part 2,
Hmm?
from managing technology and reclaiming our focus
Yeah.
to the importance of upgrading our skills and creating that sense of urgency.
A lot of good stuff.
It seems like we're well on our way to mastering this whole frog eating thing.
We are. And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore even more strategies for tackling those most important tasks and achieving greater productivity.
Okay, this is getting good, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to our final part of our deep dive on Eat That Frog. We've talked about finding those big frogs,
Oh, yeah.
figuring out how to prioritize, how to manage our tech, all that good stuff.
Lots of good stuff.
But I have a feeling
Oh, yeah.
there's even more in this book.
Oh, absolutely. We've laid the groundwork, the foundation. Now it's time to really, refine our approach and make sure we're not just eating those frogs, but, devouring them.
Devouring them.
Yeah, with gusto.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah.
So devouring frogs with gusto. Where do we even start? What are some of those final key takeaways?
Well, he keeps coming back to this idea of, developing a sense of urgency.
Yeah, we touched on that.
Which we talked about before.
Right.
But it's not about, creating a stress,
Right, it's not about just running around panic.
Yeah, not about that.
So it's more about being, intentional.
Intentional and decisive.
Decisive, yes.
Cultivating that, bias for action, taking those first steps, and then maintaining momentum.
Right.
He even suggests, some really simple tactics.
Okay, like what?
Like using self-talk.
Self-talk.
Yeah, literally just, saying things to yourself out loud.
Oh, interesting.
Do it now or back to work.
I've actually tried that before.
Yeah.
And it is kind of surprising how well it works.
So it's like a little pep talk.
Yeah, it's like a little nudge.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of getting things done,
Yeah.
he really hammers home this idea of single-handling tasks.
Single-handling tasks. Okay.
So this means working on one thing at a time from start to finish
Oh, good.
without getting sidetracked.
Oh, that's hard.
It's tough.
I'm so guilty of starting a million things at once, and then I just feel scattered.
Oh, we've all been there, right?
Oh.
But what he says is that this starting and stopping
Yeah.
actually creates more work in the long run. Yeah. It's like you're trying to juggle chainsaws.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually, something's going to drop.
Right.
So single-handling tasks
Okay.
allows you to, like, ride that efficiency curve,
Get in the zone.
get in that zone, get more done in less time.
And I imagine it also, like, you feel really good after.
Oh, yeah, you get that feeling of mastery.
Mastery, accomplishment, yeah.
Accomplishment, which feels more motivation.
Right, it's
Well,
like a cycle.
it is.
Yeah.
And speaking of mastery, remember how we were talking about upgrading your skills?
Oh, yeah.
He really dives into that in the last part of the book, too.
Okay.
It's not enough to just, like, learn something once
Right.
and then, like, coast.
Yeah, you can't just assume you know it forever.
Exactly. He says that knowledge and skills can become obsolete so quickly.
Especially these days, yeah.
Especially these days. So he encourages us to really pinpoint those core skills that are going to be essential for future success.
So how do we actually do that?
It might involve taking courses, reading, workshops, finding mentors, learning from people who are already doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
The key is to be proactive
Be proactive.
and view learning as this ongoing process.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. Okay, one final point.
Okay, hit me with it.
I think this one's super important.
All right.
It's all about identifying your key constraints.
Key constraints, what are those?
Those are the things that are really holding you back.
Okay, so the bottlenecks.
The bottlenecks, yeah.
Okay.
So he encourages us to really, honestly assess our limitations, both internal and external, and then come up with strategies to overcome them.
So where do you even begin with that? It seems like a lot.
Well, remember the 80-20 rule?
Oh, yeah.
It applies here, too.
Wow.
He suggests that 80% of our constraints are internal.
Oh, interesting. So it's us.
It's us.
It's our own habits, our own mindsets, our own fears
Oftentimes, yeah.
that are holding us back.
Exactly. Which is actually good news, right? Because it means we have the power to change those things.
So we're not just victims of circumstance.
Exactly.
We can actually take control.
We can.
So it's about taking ownership
Ownership.
and focusing on the things that we can actually change.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this.
Right.
Don't let the simplicity of these principles fool you.
Okay.
They're powerful.
Yeah.
They're actionable. And they've helped so many people achieve amazing results.
We've explored a lot today.
We have.
Setting goals, prioritizing, managing technology, all that.
Lots of great strategies.
Now it's your turn to, choose the ones that work for you.
The ones that resonate.
Yeah. And remember, progress is a journey.
It is.
Be patient with yourself.
Celebrate your wins.
Yeah. And never stop learning.
And most importantly, never stop eating those frogs.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on Eat That Frog.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
We hope you got a lot out of it. Until next time, stay productive.